Dull amber light crept through the narrow slits of Winthrop Federal Penitentiary, casting faint bars across the concrete floor. Inside one of the isolation wings, Marcel Reyes lay shackled to a narrow bunk, eyes open, unblinking. The air smelled of bleach and rust. Somewhere down the corridor, guards walked in rigid step, boots clapping on the cold floor like a metronome of inevitability. Above Marcel, a flickering light bulb buzzed with mild fury. He hadn't truly slept in days. At sunrise, they'd move him to the last cell, a sterile cube next to the execution chamber. By 9 a.m., the needle would be ready. There'd be no visitors, no family. Only Reverend Tomlin had been a presence in the final weeks, offering hollow prayers that tasted more of ritual than comfort. But Marcel had one last wish, and he kept repeating it like a mantra to the guard outside. "I just want to see Vesper one more time." Vesper, his dog, a husky shepherd mix with gray eyes and a spirit wilder than any city leash could hold. Marcel had raised her from a pup, before the night that had torn everything apart. Warden Janessa Coyle appeared at the cell door. She stood with stiff shoulders and a clipboard pressed to her chest. "Reyes," she said, "final requests require clearance. Animals aren't usually allowed on prison property, let alone death row." "I know where she is," Marcel rasped. His voice cracked. "She's with Mira Vega, my fiancée. She never gave her up." Janessa studied him. Behind protocol, there was a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. "I'll make the call," she said, "but don't expect miracles." Marcel nodded. What was left to expect? He was tired of appealing, of shouting, of waking each day labeled a murderer. For 6 years he'd claimed his innocence. The courts had stopped listening after year 2. Only Reverend Tomlin had ever confessed his doubts aloud. From outside, voices echoed down the hallway. Some think he did it. Some just want the needle banned altogether. Marcel shuffled toward the high window in his cell, a rectangle no wider than a shoebox. Beyond it, the faint blush of dawn painted the sky in muted pink. He wondered if Vesper had grown old, if she would even remember him, and if he could find some piece of himself in her eyes before the hour came. The sliver of dawn glinting through the cell reminded Marcel of quieter mornings, the kind spent walking Vesper along the misty trails of Harborview Park. He could almost feel the tug of her leash again, her excited whines as they reached the first bend. Back then, strangers would stop him. "She's gorgeous. You train her yourself?" Marcel would smile, proud. Every trick she knows. Vesper wasn't just a pet. She'd been the rhythm in his life, the laughter between paychecks, the anchor after long shifts at the metalworks plant. A sharp knock jolted him. A guard appeared at the door, clipboard in hand. "Reyes, time to move." Marcel stood slowly, his chains clinking with each motion. "Did she say yes?" he asked, voice raw. "The warden, did she find Vesper?" The guard didn't answer at first. "They're checking with the corrections board. It's not confirmed." Marcel offered his wrists for the cuffs. No protest, no questions. The routine was embedded in his bones by now. As the shackles locked in place, he stole one final glance at the pale ribbon of morning light across the floor. Would this be the last time he saw the sun stretch over the earth? Miles away, Mira Vega stood outside her weathered apartment in the north end of Calvador City. She hadn't slept. Her fingers trembled around her car keys. She'd seen the news. Marcel's execution was set for that morning. Inside, Vesper was already awake, curled near the back window, where the first hints of daybreak slipped through the curtains. Her muzzle had grayed in patches, but her ears still perked at the sound of Mira's footsteps. Mira knelt beside her. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered. He always said you could sense things. 5 years ago, their life had been ready to begin. Wedding invites stacked neatly, a rental deposit made, their names stitched together on everything from the mailbox to a joint bank account. Then came the arrest. A murder Marcel swore he didn't commit. A knife, a broken timeline, and a courtroom that never paused to listen. Mira had never stopped believing him. The evidence never added up. Grainy security footage, an inconsistent witness, and a supposed motive tied to debts that never existed. She stroked Vesper's head gently. He asked for you, girl. I know he did. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, pulling her from the memory. Unknown number. Mira hesitated. Her breath caught in her throat as she answered. Hello? Miss Vega, said the calm voice on the line. This is Warden Janessa Coyle from Winthrop Federal. Mira's stomach turned icy. Yes, she managed. Is something wrong? Has something changed? I'm afraid the execution is still scheduled for this morning, the warden replied. But Marcel Reyes has submitted a final request to see his dog, Vesper, one last time. Mira's breath caught. He asked for her? He did. And, unusually, the Department of Corrections granted conditional approval. But we're on a tight timeline. If Vesper is in your care, we'll need you both here within 90 minutes, or the visit can't happen. Mira didn't hesitate. We're coming. Right now. She hung up, heart hammering, then turned to Vesper, who was already standing. The dog's tail thumped the floor, sensing something urgent in the air. Mira reached for the leash with trembling fingers. Let's go see him, girl. The words came out as a whisper, as if saying them louder would make them break. She moved like someone in a dream, throwing on a jacket, grabbing keys, phone, wallet. Vesper padded beside her with quiet understanding. This wasn't a reunion. It was a goodbye. But still, it meant something. For Marcel. For her. For a past that never stopped lingering. As the truck rumbled to life and pulled onto the highway, Mira's thoughts raced faster than the engine. She knew Marcel's request wasn't just about Vesper. It was about holding on to one last piece of himself. Something untarnished, something still real. The sky ahead burned orange and rose, the sun lifting like a torch over the quiet streets. Mira risked a glance in the rearview mirror. Vesper sat upright in the back seat, ears twitching, eyes alert. Every now and then, she let out a small, anxious whine. I know, girl, Mira murmured. Me too. Her phone buzzed again. Friends, maybe reporters, people who had seen the news. She ignored it all. Right now, the only thing that mattered was getting Vesper there in time. But what if something went wrong? What if a change in policy reversed the warden's decision? Or a last-minute technicality denied them at the gate? Just hold on, Marcel, she whispered. Please, hold on a little longer. The lights all seemed to stay green, as if the universe, for once, was trying to make room for grace. As the looming fences of Winthrop appeared in the distance, Mira felt the weight of the moment settle across her chest like stone. She slowed near the main checkpoint. A uniformed officer stepped forward. Mira rolled down the window. I'm here for Marcel Reyes, she said, voice shaking. This is his dog, Vesper. The guard studied his clipboard for a moment, then gave a tight nod. Proceed to the eastern wing, he said. Side entrance. Wait in the vehicle until we confirm everything inside. Mira parked near a steel-reinforced gate, flanked by cameras and guards. She reached into the back seat and placed a hand gently on Vesper's side. Just a little longer, girl. You'll see him soon. Vesper leaned into her touch, pressing her muzzle into Mira's palm, as if reassuring her in return. Mira exhaled shakily. Her mind drifted to thoughts she hadn't allowed herself in years. The sound of Marcel's laugh, the warmth of his hand in hers, the scent of his jacket when he returned from late shifts. Did he still have that soft dimple on his left cheek when he smiled? Did he still smell like cedarwood soap and motor oil? Tears came without warning. She wiped them away quickly. There wasn't time to fall apart. A door creaked open in the distance. Another guard waved at her to approach. Mira snapped back to focus. This was it. Elsewhere in the city, in a sparsely furnished apartment, above a pawn shop, a man named Isaac Dempsey knotted his tie in front of a mirror. He was nearing retirement, and it showed in the crow's feet around his eyes and the slouch of his shoulders. He had once been one of the most respected detectives in Calvador. For decades, Isaac had prided himself on precision. Every case airtight, every detail methodically filed. But one case had haunted him. Marcel Reyes. He had been the lead investigator, the prince, the motive, the eyewitness. It had seemed like an open and shut case. Yet, cracks had appeared over time. A fellow officer once whispered, "You ever wonder why no one followed up on the apartment camera logs?" Another mentioned the victim's erased financial records. And then, there was the missing digital forensic analysis, a second report that had vanished into a locked drawer. Isaac could no longer sleep soundly. Now, as the clock ticked down to Marcel's execution, he found himself sifting through transcripts again, poring over evidence that had been overlooked or ignored. Each inconsistency scraped against his conscience like sandpaper. The victim, a man named Jonathan Wexler, had more enemies than friends. Some powerful, some with much to lose. Marcel didn't fit the profile. His record was clean, his alibi never properly debunked. Isaac's phone vibrated on the counter. "Execution proceeding at 9. If you have anything, now's the time." The message came from someone inside the DA's office. Isaac stared at it for a long moment, the weight of inaction pressing down on his chest like a cinder block. Then he grabbed his old leather holster and slipped it beneath his coat. Not because he expected trouble, just force of habit. And then he left. If there was even the faintest chance Marcel Reyes was innocent, Isaac would not let him die without trying. For years, Isaac Dempsey had thought about speaking up, but fear of losing his badge, his reputation, his legacy, kept him silent. He'd tried, in small ways. He'd nudged his superiors to revisit the Wexler case, hinted at oddities in the timeline, questioned the lack of follow-up on key witnesses. Each time, he was met with shrugs or silence. To the department, Marcel's conviction was a win, and Wexler, a respected entrepreneur with too many friends in high places. His image had been polished posthumously into that of a philanthropist, his darker dealings conveniently ignored. They needed someone to blame. Marcel had been perfect. Poor, quiet, black and white motives they could wrap a closing argument around. Now, Isaac checked the clock. 7:21 a.m. He picked up a burner phone, something he kept for privacy, and dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, "Yeah?" came the reply. Gruff, alert. "It's Dempsey," Isaac said. "I need a favor, and we're on a deadline." The man on the other end was a data analyst, not official, not clean, but efficient. If digital breadcrumbs existed pointing to another suspect, he'd find them. Isaac knew it might be too little, too late, but he had to try. He slid behind the wheel of his rusted Ford sedan and pulled into the morning traffic. The streets of Calvador City blurred past him. His mind drifted to Marcel's face the day of the arrest. Not defiant, not cold, just bewildered. "I didn't do this," Marcel had said. Calm, certain. Not like a killer. More like someone waiting to wake from a nightmare. Isaac had interrogated dozens of liars. Marcel had never fit the mold. He pulled into the lot behind the old public library. The building wasn't open yet, but its Wi-Fi signal still blanketed the parking area. Isaac plugged a flash drive into his laptop and began uploading the case files to the analyst. Photos, transcripts, forensics, the good, the bad, and the buried. As the progress bar crawled, he stared out at the sun rising behind the rooftops. He hadn't felt this unsure in years, but he knew one thing. If Marcel Reyes died that morning, and he had done nothing, he'd carry that silence to the grave. A text popped up. Files received. Give me an hour. Isaac stared at it, then typed back. We don't have an hour. Execution at 9. Move fast. Isaac pulled onto the expressway, headed straight for the county courthouse. The buildings loomed ahead, like stone sentinels, cold and indifferent. His phone sat on the passenger seat, silent. No update yet from his contact. If by some miracle they found a data trail, bank logs, GPS pings, emails, that proved Marcel had been framed, he had to be the one to put it in the warden's hands. No one else would move fast enough. He had no illusions. This wasn't a Hail Mary. It was a bullet into a storm. But if there was even a 1% chance. He pressed harder on the gas pedal. Wind rushed past the windows. The sky was clearing, clouds parting just enough to let a sliver of light through. He took it as a sign, fragile and fleeting. If the evidence came too late, all that would remain was a body and a mess no one wanted to clean. Inside Winthrop Federal's death row wing, Marcel was led through a maze of corridors, each one colder and more sterile than the last. The walls were tile white, the floors scuffed by countless shoes and shackles. They placed him in the final holding cell. A fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The air carried a faint sting of disinfectant and metal. A tray sat waiting on the bench, a fast food burger, soda, and a small bag of chips, his chosen last meal. He didn't eat. The burger's smell reminded him of the day he and Mira first brought Vesper home. She had fallen asleep in his lap while they ate on the couch. Correctional Officer Marla Reyes, no relation, stood outside the door. Her voice came through the narrow slot. You'll be prepped in 30 minutes. The warden's still waiting for confirmation on the dog. Marcel managed a quiet, thanks. She didn't move. After a long pause, she added, if it were up to me, I'd want someone there too. He nodded, not expecting kindness, but appreciating it. Then he sat down, hands resting on his knees, staring at the blank wall in front of him. Each second passed like a pebble dropped into an endless well. Would Vesper remember him? Would Mira? Would they be allowed in? He reached for the soda, took one sip, then set it down. His stomach was in knots. He felt more hollow than hungry. The silence in the room pressed against him. Somewhere in the hallway, a faint sound, a set of approaching footsteps, stirred his chest with hope. The footsteps stopped just outside his cell. The lock clicked. The door opened. First came Warden Coyle, her jaw tight, eyes unreadable. Behind her, Mira, and beside her, Vesper. Time collapsed. The moment the dog saw him, Vesper froze. Her ears perked. Her entire body quivered. Then, like an arrow loosed from a bow, she launched forward, leash slipping from Mira's grip. Vesper, Marcel breathed, falling to his knees. The dog let out a loud bark, then a volley of frantic, joyful yelps. Her nails scraped the floor as she clambered toward him. Marcel opened his arms. She nearly tackled him. He wrapped both arms around her neck, burying his face in the thick fur. Vesper's tail slapped the floor like a metronome gone wild. She made that sound again, half whine, half cry, that she only made when he came home late from work. A nearby guard started forward, but Warden Coyle held up a hand. Let them be. Marcel looked up, and there she was, Mira, hands trembling, eyes glistening. He hadn't seen her in over 5 years, but nothing had changed in the way she looked at him. "Mira," he whispered. She gave a small nod, lips pressed together to keep from breaking. She took one step closer. "I tried everything," she said softly. "The appeals, the articles, even begged the new DA. No one listened." "You did more than enough," Marcel said, his voice cracking. "You stayed." They knelt on opposite sides of Vesper, who was now lying between them, licking Marcel's face like she was trying to clean 5 years of absence off his skin. Warden Coyle cleared her throat. "You have 15 minutes, she said gently. Then the chaplain arrives. Marcel turned toward her. "Thank you for letting her in." "You earned this," she said, then added quietly, "I hope it's not all for nothing." Mira reached across Vesper's back and found Marcel's hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. For a moment, the room held only them, not the guards outside, not the ticking clock, not the looming sentence. "She's still yours," Mira said. "I never gave her up, no matter what anyone said." Marcel let his head rest against Vesper's side. The warmth, the heartbeat, the familiar scent of fur and earth and safety. For a few sacred moments, time paused. The world outside may have been crumbling, but in this room, something eternal remained. Love, unshaken by bars, or years or courts. 15 minutes, the warden had said. But to Marcel, it felt like the first time he'd truly lived in 5 years. Mira rose slowly. Her hand lingered on Marcel's shoulder. "I'll be waiting outside," she whispered, "until the very end." Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned and walked out, wrapping her arms tightly around herself, as if holding something inside from falling apart. The door closed with a final sounding hiss. Marcel was alone again, but not quite. Vesper remained, her head in his lap, tail tapping occasionally, unsure but loyal, always loyal. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Beyond the glass window, guards stood watch. But inside, the cell felt like a bubble, suspended in stillness. Marcel ran his fingers behind Vesper's ears, the way she loved. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said softly. "Not one day." The dog gave a small whine and nudged his arm with her nose. "You remember those walks through Harborview? You'd chase leaves like they were enemies. You hated squirrels. You once dove into a pond over a dragonfly." He chuckled, the sound thin but real. For a moment, his voice faded. He swallowed hard. "There were nights I almost gave up, when I thought maybe it'd be easier to just go quiet. But then I'd think of you, girl, of how you used to wait at the door, tail wagging, eyes so full of joy." Vesper licked his cheek. It wasn't understanding, not in the human sense, but it was presence, connection, the only thing he hadn't lost. A knock sounded, subtle, the kind that meant time was ticking. Marcel closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. He pressed his forehead against Vesper's. "They say I did it, that I stabbed a man over a debt I didn't owe, that I left my prince behind, like I was asking to be caught." He opened his eyes. "But I didn't kill Jonathan Wexler. I never even got the chance to say that in court without being interrupted." He reached up and placed both hands on Vesper's face. "I love you," he whispered. Vesper stared back, eyes steady, as if burning his face into memory. Then he took a breath and stepped back, expecting someone would come to take her away. But instead, the warden's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Reyes, your time is up, but if you'd like, Vesper may stay with you a few more minutes, until the chaplain arrives." Marcel blinked. His voice caught. Yes, please." Thank you. He sank back onto the bunk. Vesper jumped beside him, curling up tightly. In that tiny white room, beneath humming lights and within view of cold eyes, something astonishing unfolded. Love remained. Outside the cell, Mira stood against the wall, arms crossed tight, head bowed. She couldn't hear anything from within, not Marcel's voice, not Vesper's quiet sounds, not even the buzz of the overhead lights, only silence and waiting. Then a low, steady voice broke the stillness. "Miss Vega?" She turned sharply. A tall man in a navy suit stood before her. His hair was peppered gray, and his eyes were worn, the kind of tired that years of guilt could carve. "I'm Isaac Dempsey," he said, offering his hand. "I was the lead detective on Marcel's case." Mira stared at him, stunned. Then her expression hardened. "Why now?" she said. "Why come here with an hour left? Don't you think it's a little late for closure?" He didn't flinch. "I'm not here for closure," he replied quietly. "I'm here because I believe we got it wrong." Her throat tightened. "You believed he was guilty for 5 years. I had doubts for 2. 2 years too late," she snapped. "I know," he said, "and I wish I'd acted sooner. But now, I'm trying. I've reopened the digital trail. I have someone analyzing Wexler's financials, the ones the prosecution never showed. We might have something. Enough to stop this, if the warden agrees to escalate." Mira's anger simmered beneath her tears. "He has minutes left. Minutes. And now you want to be a hero?" Isaac shook his head. "Not a hero. Just someone who can't stomach being silent anymore." Mira studied him. Then, despite herself, she said softly, "If you really mean it, talk to the warden." They walked together toward the administrative wing. Warden Coyle stood just outside a frosted glass door, flipping through a file. When she saw Isaac, her eyes narrowed. "Detective Dempsey," she said coldly, "you're not on any approved list." "I need 5 minutes," he said. "I have reason to believe Marcel Reyes was framed. New digital traces are being analyzed right now. We may have proof that someone else, someone named Walton Green, was involved in Wexler's murder." Her jaw tightened. "Do you understand how close we are to the scheduled procedure?" "I do. That's why I'm asking you to call the governor's office. Request a temporary stay." Mira stepped forward. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "Marcel's life is hanging by a thread. We just need time." The warden paused. Her eyes flicked between the two of them. Then she exhaled slowly. "I'll forward your claim to legal counsel, but unless you show me solid evidence in the next half hour, I can't halt anything." Isaac nodded. "My contact is sending files now. If you have nothing concrete," Warden Coyle said firmly, "then this is hearsay, and I can't act on that." Just then, a correctional officer approached briskly. "Ma'am, there's a call for you. Line 3, from the district attorney's office." Coyle's eyes narrowed. Perfect timing, or perfectly terrible. She excused herself and stepped into a nearby office. Mira turned to Isaac, voice low and tense. "Do you think that call's about us?" "I can only hope," he said. "If not, I'll raise hell. Start shouting about mishandled evidence, chain of custody violations, whatever it takes to slow them down." Mira grabbed his sleeve, desperation flashing in her eyes. "Even a 1% chance is worth it. We can't let him die for something he didn't do." Just then, Isaac's phone buzzed. A message. He opened it and read. His breath hitched. "They found something." Mira's eyes widened. "What?" "Transactions. Big ones. Moving through dummy corporations connected to Jonathan Wexler, right around the time of the murder. Hidden accounts. It might be hush money. It might be a setup." Mira swayed slightly, as if the ground shifted beneath her. "This could prove Marcel didn't have a motive," she said. or that someone else did. Isaac nodded. And the name Walton Green keeps coming up. A known fixer. If Green was moving money through Wexler's network, that's serious. If we can connect him to the scene. The office door opened suddenly. Warden Coyle stepped out, her expression pale. The DA's office is considering a temporary stay, she said cautiously, but only if we can present credible time-stamped evidence, and it has to go through the governor's legal team. No shortcuts. Isaac held up his phone. Let me forward the files. Send them to my secure line, she said, ushering them into her office. A desktop computer, fax machine, and direct phone line sat waiting. Isaac typed furiously, transmitting the new data to her inbox. Warden Coyle was already dialing. Governor's Counsel, she said into the receiver. I'm looking at evidence that could suggest a wrongful conviction. We can't proceed until it's verified. Mira stood behind them, hands clenched, heart pounding. Could this actually work? Could the evidence get there in time? She closed her eyes and pictured Marcel, sitting alone, counting down what might have been his last moments. If they failed, that would be her last memory of him, and she couldn't live with that. Coyle hung up. They'll call back shortly, she said. If this data checks out, they'll grant a 2-hour stay. But that's all. Mira nodded, breath catching. 2 hours, Isaac whispered. Better than 0. If we can verify those shell corporations, Isaac said, and tie them directly to Walton Green, ideally with timestamps or location data, we might be able to ask for a full stay. Warden Coyle's posture finally relaxed. Slightly. For now, we keep this off the press. If word gets out before an official decree, we risk a media circus. Mira nodded, her hands shaking. Just tell us what to do. The warden turned to her. If this evidence proves even partial exoneration, I'll personally block the execution. But we have 90 minutes. Everything depends on what your contact finds next. Mira nodded again, eyes glistening. She whispered something under her breath. A prayer, a promise, or maybe just Marcel's name. Meanwhile, back in the whitewashed holding cell, Chaplain Tomlin knocked gently on the door. Mr. Reyes, may I come in? Marcel lifted his head from where it rested on Vesper's shoulder. He was hollow-eyed, yet strangely calm. He nodded slowly. Yes. Please. A guard stepped in, whispering something to Warden Coyle, who had returned to observe. Then the leash was gently removed from Marcel's hand. Vesper whined as she was guided toward the exit, paws resisting, eyes darting. Marcel leaned forward. It's okay, girl, he whispered. I'll see you soon. He kissed the air in her direction, and the dog let out a mournful, low cry before vanishing behind the door. Chaplain Tomlin stepped inside. He wore a plain clerical shirt, sleeves rolled up. No cross, no collar, just quiet compassion. They're preparing the chamber, he said gently, but I wanted to sit with you, unless... No, Marcel interrupted. I'm glad you're here. They sat together. The chaplain prayed softly, and Marcel listened. Not because he believed anything would save him now, but because the sound of another human voice was something to hold on to. He thought of his mother. Gone now. She had raised him to believe in redemption, even for people the world had thrown away. He wondered what she would say if she saw him now. He didn't cry, but something in him cracked. Then, mid-prayer, the door opened again. Warden Coyle entered briskly. Chaplain, she said. I need a word with Mr. Reyes. Tomlin nodded and stepped aside. She approached Marcel, her voice low, urgent. Marcel, we've received new information, evidence that may question your role in Wexler's murder. Based on that, the governor has approved a temporary stay. Marcel blinked. A stay? She nodded. You are not dying at 9 o'clock. He stared at her, breathless. She continued. We have 2 hours. If the new files check out, you may be granted a full investigation. Marcel sat back against the wall, stunned. So someone finally believes me? Not yet, she said, but we believe there may be reason to. For the first time, Warden Coyle said carefully, we have official cause to question your conviction. Detective Dempsey is pushing for a full review. Marcel's thoughts swirled. Hope, fear, anger, exhaustion. A cocktail of emotions that left his fingers trembling. 2 hours. He had 2 more hours to live, or to finally start reclaiming the life he'd been robbed of. He looked at Chaplain Tomlin, who seemed just as surprised. I'll remain here, the chaplain said quietly, and help however I can. Marcel nodded, still in disbelief. Just then, a guard stepped in and handed Warden Coyle a phone. She stepped away to answer it, leaving Marcel and the chaplain alone again. Tomlin turned to him. Marcel, this could be the miracle we prayed for. Marcel shook his head slowly. I don't know how to hope anymore. If it falls apart, how do I face it all over again? The needle. The silence. Tomlin placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then you face it the same way you always have, with dignity and the truth. Marcel rubbed his face with both hands. His thoughts chased each other. If he lived, what would happen next? Where would he go? Did he still have a place in Mira's life? What about work, money, a home? His name would still be stained, even if he walked free. He gripped the edge of the bunk, trying to ground himself. Bathed in fluorescent light, the cell had become a strange purgatory, no longer a place of death, but not yet one of life. Warden Coyle returned, face tight with focus. You'll stay here under watch, she said. If the evidence pans out, we'll halt the execution process entirely. Thank you, Marcel whispered, voice cracking. For giving me a chance. She gave a short nod. We'll update you the moment anything changes. Then she stepped out, locking the door behind her. Tomlin remained seated near the far wall. Do you want to talk about how you're feeling? Marcel gave a weak laugh. Terrified. The word hung in the air. Terrified to hope, he continued, and terrified not to. I was ready to die, and now I have to wonder if I might live, and that's just as scary. Tomlin handed him a paper cup filled from the small sink. Whatever happens, you're not facing it alone. The next 20 minutes passed in thick silence. Outside, voices murmured. Footsteps echoed. At 9:52 a.m., the lock buzzed. A guard stepped in, then moved aside. And then, Vesper burst through the door. She lunged forward, tail whipping wildly, tongue lolling, eyes bright. Marcel stood frozen. What? The guard shrugged. Warden figured you'd want your dog back in here. Figured you could both use the company. Marcel sank to his knees as Vesper barreled into his arms. Vesper whimpered joyfully, licking Marcel's chin and neck with frantic affection. He wrapped both arms around her, letting out a laugh that quickly collapsed into tears. You're still here, he whispered. You're still mine. Chaplain Tomlin quietly stepped back, giving them space. Marcel buried his face in her fur. Maybe we're not done yet, girl. Maybe we've still got time. And for the first time in 5 years, he believed it might be true. Across the prison compound, Warden Coyle's office was a hive of tension. Isaac Dempsey paced the floor while Mira stood near the window, too tense to speak. The clock read 10:05. Less than an hour remained in the stay. Isaac's phone buzzed. He read the message, eyes going wide. They traced the shell corporations, he said. The ones funneling money through Wexler's accounts. They link back to a man named Walton Green, a known fixer, vanished after Marcel's trial. Warden Coyle cupped the phone's receiver, eyes narrowing. A fixer? Yeah. Isaac nodded. He may have staged the whole thing, even planted evidence. If Green was working for someone who wanted Wexler gone, Marcel could have just been the fall guy. Mira's hands trembled. Do we have anything tying Green to the scene? Something solid? Isaac checked his phone again. Not yet, just financials. But we're working on location data. Just then, the door opened. A man stepped in, tall and rigid with a severe expression. Thomas Vale, Assistant District Attorney. He'd been the one who pushed hardest for Marcel's conviction 5 years ago. I was told there's new evidence that could halt the execution, he said flatly. I'm here to see it myself. Isaac didn't hide his disdain. You never even looked at half the evidence we had. Vale crossed his arms. Show me something that places this Walton Green at the scene. Otherwise, this is noise. Mira's voice cracked. You're saying even with evidence that someone else was moving money, hiding identities, you won't even consider a stay? Speculation isn't exoneration, Vale replied coldly. Warden Coyle ended her call. Enough, she said. The governor's office wants more, a direct tie, a location log, a receipt, something physical. Isaac's phone buzzed again. He grabbed it and scanned the message. Then his face lit up. They found burner phone pings. Green's phone was in the Redwood district the night Wexler was killed, within a mile of the penthouse. Mira gasped. That places him right there. Warden Coyle repeated the location aloud to the governor's counsel on the phone. After a long pause, she looked up. They're considering a full temporary stay. It's not confirmation, but it's real. For the first time, Mira allowed herself to breathe. Assistant DA Thomas Vale stood rigid. Burner phone pings are circumstantial, he muttered. They don't prove Green killed Wexler. Isaac stepped forward, voice steely. But they prove he was there, at the exact time. A known fixer, linked to hidden accounts tied to the victim, and his name never appeared at trial. That's because I never saw those files, Vale snapped. And maybe that's the problem, Mira shot back. You didn't want to see them. Warden Coyle cut in. Focus. The governor's council wants a direct link, a hotel record, surveillance image, bank withdrawal, anything placing Green with Wexler or near the building on that night. Isaac sent a quick text to his contact. Dig harder. Need GPS logs or proof Green entered Wexler's building. Mira turned to Vale, her voice cracking with emotion. You helped put an innocent man on death row. If there's even a chance to undo that, don't you want to help? Vale's expression flickered. Something old and bitter shifted beneath the surface. I never wanted an innocent man to die, he said at last. But doubt isn't enough. Before anyone could answer, the phone on Coyle's desk rang again. She snatched it up. Yes? She paused. Her eyes widened. Understood. I'll hold. Covering the mouthpiece, she turned to the room. They pulled location logs. Green's phone pinged multiple towers near Wexler's penthouse. Last call was placed at 12:07 a.m., the estimated time of death. Between 12 o'clock and 12:15, Mira gasped. That puts him at the scene. Isaac clenched his jaw. Still think that's noise, Vale? Even the DA's posture softened. His voice lowered. It's compelling, but I want to see it for myself. Coyle relayed the details to the governor's staff, her voice measured but urgent. She listened for several tense moments before hanging up. They'll review it immediately. If verified, they'll issue a temporary stay of 48 hours. Vale exhaled sharply. If this leaks, it'll tear the Justice Department apart. This isn't about optics, Mira snapped. It's about Marcel. Isaac added, if we got played, if Green was hired to make Wexler disappear and used Marcel as cover, then everything about this case is broken. The room went silent. Then the phone rang again. Coyle answered, listened, nodded. Slowly, she set it down. The governor grants a 48-hour stay of execution, effective immediately. Reyes will not be executed today. Mira sank into a chair, tears streaming freely. Isaac leaned back, closing his eyes. Vale stood frozen, jaw tight. The perfect conviction he'd once paraded through headlines was unraveling. Mira whispered, he's going to live. The execution is off, Warden Coyle said, for 48 hours, officially. We'll notify the prison staff immediately. Mira collapsed into the nearest chair, sobs spilling down her cheeks. She didn't care who saw. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not letting him die. Isaac exhaled long and slow. He'd been carrying this weight for too many years, and it wasn't gone. Not yet. But it had shifted, just enough to breathe. Vale said nothing. Mira could see the war behind his eyes, between pride, fear, and the uncomfortable possibility that he had been wrong. Warden Coyle stood and motioned to the others. Come with me. He needs to hear this from someone who believes it. Back in the holding cell, Marcel paced like a caged animal. Vesper lay curled on the floor, watching him with sleepy, trusting eyes. Neither had spoken in over 10 minutes. He kept thinking, no news is bad news. Maybe the silence means they ran out of time. Then, a sound. The metallic clang of a lock turning. The door opened. Warden Coyle stepped inside, followed by Mira and Detective Dempsey. Behind them, surprisingly, Assistant D. Vale. Marcel froze. Mr. Reyes, Coyle said, I just received confirmation. The governor has granted a full 48-hour stay. You will not be executed today. Marcel blinked, unsure he heard correctly. What? What does that mean? It means you have time, she said, to finish the investigation, to let the truth surface. And if the evidence keeps pointing where it's pointing, it could mean your freedom. His knees buckled. Mira rushed forward and caught him before he hit the floor. He clung to her like a drowning man to shore. Vesper barked once, sharply, as if echoing the relief. You're not dying today, Mira whispered into his shoulder. You're not dying. He looked up at the others, at Coyle, at Dempsey, and finally, at Vale. You put me here, Marcel said quietly. Vale met his eyes. I may have, he said, and I may have been wrong. Marcel held his gaze, then slowly nodded. I told you, he said, voice breaking. I never killed Wexler. I never even saw him that night. I believe you, Dempsey said, and I'm going to prove it. Coyle nodded to the guard. Transfer him to a regular wing. No shackles. He's not a condemned man anymore. As Mira helped him sit, Marcel reached for Vesper. She licked his hand and pressed close, warm and solid. He smiled through tears. We've got time, girl. We've got time now. I'm not free yet, Marcel said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bunk while Mira stroked Vesper's back. 48 hours. That's not forever. No, Mira replied, her voice soft. But it's not nothing either. It's a crack in the wall. Detective Dempsey stepped forward. We've found evidence connecting Walton Green to the crime scene. Phone pings, shadow transactions, even surveillance gaps. But we're still digging. Marcel looked at him, unsure how to feel. Why now? Dempsey didn't look away. Because for too long, I was too scared to admit I'd made a mistake. Now, I want to make it right. Mira squeezed Marcel's hand. We're going to clear your name, not just save your life. Clear it. He nodded slowly, still trying to process it all. For 5 years, hope had been a luxury. Now it sat in front of him, wearing a badge and a wedding ring and licking his palm. Warden Coyle checked her watch. "Protocol says we need to move you out of the death wing. You'll be transferred to general holding, no longer on death row. It's still prison, but not the end of the road." Marcel stood, his legs a little shaky but grounded. "What happens if you do prove I'm innocent?" he asked. "Then the DA drops the charges," Dempsey said, "and you walk out that gate." Marcel stared at the heavy steel door. Could he really walk through it? Coyle added, "You'll have a hearing soon. If the judge agrees, we may not even need a retrial." Mira smiled, tears in her eyes. "You might come home." He looked at her, then down at Vesper. The dog tilted her head, sensing his hesitation. "I don't even know what home is anymore," he admitted. "I lost everything." "You didn't lose me," Mira said, "and you didn't lose her. We'll figure it out, one day at a time." Coyle nodded toward the hallway. "The transfer team is ready. Vesper can stay a little longer during processing, but after that, she goes home with Mira." Marcel bent down and hugged the dog tightly. "I'll see you soon, girl," he whispered. "And next time, maybe we'll be walking out of here together." He watched as Mira and Vesper were gently escorted toward the exit. Mira turned and waved before disappearing around the corner. The door closed behind them, locking him back inside. But the cell no longer felt like a grave. It felt like a waiting room, a place with a door that might actually open. Marcel sat back on the bunk, silence thick around him. The hum of the overhead light, the distant clang of metal doors. But this time, the silence wasn't crushing. It was waiting. Detective Dempsey lingered in the doorway. "You have every right to hate me," he said finally. "I built the case that almost killed you." Marcel didn't answer right away. "I am angry," he said. "I lost 5 years. My name, my future. That doesn't vanish because of one good act." Dempsey nodded. "It shouldn't. But I'll do everything I can to make it right. Not just for the courts, but for you." Marcel studied him, saw the guilt carved into the man's expression, the exhaustion of someone who'd stopped lying to himself. "Then do it," Marcel said quietly. "Not for me. For everyone else like me, who didn't get a second chance." Dempsey's jaw tightened. "I will." He turned and left without another word, leaving Marcel alone again, but not broken. He sat there shaking, adrenaline slowly draining from his body. In the corner, the untouched burger still sat on the tray, cold now, lifeless, but somehow still there, like him. Maybe later, he thought, when he had the strength, when he could taste food without feeling like it might be his last bite. Outside, the prison world carried on, boots echoing through halls, voices over radios, keys rattling. The mechanical rhythm of a system too big to notice the lives it ground down. But for the first time, Marcel didn't feel like just another part of that machinery. He felt human. News of the execution's delay spread like wildfire. Crowds outside Winthrop Prison broke into shouting matches. Supporters of Wexler called it a betrayal of justice. Anti-death penalty groups held up signs reading, "Innocence deserves time," and "The system blinked, finally." Mira navigated through the chaos with Vesper at her side, weaving through reporters and cameras. Voices bombarded her. "Miss Vega, did the governor personally call you? Is Marcel Reyes innocent? Will you sue for wrongful imprisonment?" She raised a hand, shielding her face. "No comment. Just let us through." A man in a suit stepped into her path. "Eric Dole, Channel 9. Just one moment." Suddenly, a firm hand gripped her shoulder and pulled her gently back. "Move aside," A uniformed officer barked, clearing a path. Mira nodded her thanks. The officer guided her and Vesper to her pickup truck. She climbed in, locked the doors, and sat for a long moment, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Vesper whined softly in the back seat. "We did it," she whispered. "We bought him time." But in the pit of her stomach, Mira knew the battle wasn't over. This city had protected its secrets for a long time. Someone had orchestrated this mess. Someone still hadn't been named. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I can help prove Marcel Reyes is innocent. Contact me." Mira stared at it. Hope or another trap? Mira saved the message. She would forward it to Dempsey later, after she'd caught her breath. She finally pulled out of the prison lot, the truck rattling as it hit the main road. Vesper sat behind her, panting softly, her chin resting on the edge of the seat. At home, the living room looked frozen in time. Half-packed boxes along the walls, a stack of unopened letters, a calendar stuck on a month 2 years gone. Mira had never fully settled in this place. She hadn't known how, not since the trial. Vesper sniffed around and went to her water bowl. Mira sat on the couch and buried her face in her hands. "We've got 48 hours, she whispered. 48 hours to prove everything." The pressure felt unbearable. But failure wasn't an option. Vesper padded over and placed her head in Mira's lap. Mira stroked her ears absently. "We can't let him down." Across town, Isaac Dempsey stood at the front desk of the Redwood City Police Department. His badge still held weight here, but his presence now felt different. The looks from officers, wary, resentful, told him he was walking into a hornet's nest. He was no longer protecting the department's legacy. He was undoing it. "I need access to all records from the Wexler case," he told the records clerk. The man hesitated. "That case was closed 5 years ago." "Then unclose it," Isaac said, flashing the order from the governor's office. "Now." The clerk's face tightened, but he complied. Minutes later, Isaac was in a back room, surrounded by dust-covered boxes and yellowing files. He opened one marked Forensics Wexler and immediately found what he didn't expect. A second forensic report, one that had never appeared in court, labeled #2. He skimmed it. His hands began to shake. Partial footprints that didn't match Marcel or the victim. Entry signs from a fire escape window that wasn't examined at trial. Gunpowder residue, even though the alleged murder weapon was a knife. None of it had been presented in court. At the bottom, due to chain of custody issues, these samples were deemed inconclusive and not forwarded to the prosecution. Isaac snapped the folder shut. This wasn't just oversight. This was suppression. He exited the room with the files in hand. "I'm logging these for active review," he told the clerk. "Put my name on it." The clerk looked like he wanted to object, but didn't. Back in his car, Isaac texted Mira. "Found suppressed forensics. This is bigger than we thought." He didn't need to add what they both already knew. The case against Marcel Reyes was beginning to collapse, and someone powerful had tried to bury the truth. Mira read the message again. "I can help prove Marcel Reyes is innocent. Contact me." She stared at it, then replied, "Who are you?" 3 dots. Typing, then gone. Then a reply, "Not safe here. Meet me at Ridgeway Diner, 11 p.m. booth by the jukebox." It was already past 9. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed trap. But what if it was real? What if this stranger knew something the courts didn't? She grabbed her coat and clipped a leash to Vesper's collar. "Stay close," she whispered, "no matter what." Ridgeway Diner looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s, all chrome, peeling booths, and flickering neon signs. At 11:03, Mira entered. The place was nearly empty. A lone cook in the back, a waitress wiping down a counter, and in the far booth, a figure wearing a hoodie, head low. Mira approached cautiously. "You're the one who texted me?" The figure looked up. A woman, early 40s, with sharp eyes and nicotine-stained fingers. "Name's Shelby. I used to work for Wexler." Mira sat slowly, Vesper settling beside her. Shelby leaned forward. "I cleaned his place twice a week. The night he died, I saw someone go in through the fire escape. Not Marcel. Tall guy, limpio. Didn't see his face, but I heard Wexler yelling, not scared, more like arguing." "Why didn't you come forward?" Mira whispered. Shelby gave a bitter laugh. "I did. Cops told me I was mistaken. Then 2 days later, someone broke into my apartment. Took my calendar, my receipts, even my old work boots. I got the message." She pulled a wrinkled photo from her coat and slid it across the table. It showed a man, back turned, stepping onto a metal staircase outside Wexler's building. The timestamp was the night of the murder. The figure had a slight limp. "I took that on my way home," Shelby said. "Didn't mean to. I just like taking weird photos." Mira's heart raced. "You still have the original file?" "Backed up on a hard drive. But I'm not emailing it. Too risky. You want it. You come get it." Mira reached into her bag. "We can protect you. The press." "Don't bring the press," Shelby said. "Bring that detective, Dempsey. He's the only one who might still have a soul in that department." Mira stood. "We'll come tomorrow." Shelby looked at her, dead serious. "Come before noon. I don't sleep easy anymore." Mira nodded and left quickly, pulling Vesper close. Outside, the night was quiet. Too quiet. She checked behind her as she got into the truck. No footsteps, no headlights. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The next morning, Isaac Dempsey pulled up in front of Mira's house at 7:46 a.m. Vesper barked from the window as Mira opened the door. "She's ready," Mira said. "Name's Shelby, ex-housekeeper. Saw someone at the crime scene the night of the murder, and took a picture." Isaac raised a brow. "Seriously?" "She says she tried reporting it, got shut down, then threatened." Isaac nodded grimly. "Then let's move." Shelby's apartment was in a rust-streaked building with broken mailboxes and a flickering hallway light. They knocked twice, then again. The chain slid. The door cracked. She peeked out, eyes darting. "Come in, fast." Inside, stacks of old magazines, VHS tapes, and peeling wallpaper created a sense of a life paused long ago. But Shelby moved with precision, leading them to a closet she'd padlocked shut from the inside. She pulled out a metal box. "Backups," she said. "I used to do wedding photos for extra cash. Learned to keep evidence." She booted up a creaky laptop. The fan roared to life. After a few minutes, she opened a folder, labeled Night Wexler. There it was, a high-resolution shot from her camera, time-stamped 11:58 p.m. The man on the fire escape wore a dark coat. The limp was visible. Most importantly, the photo had metadata. Geolocation and timestamp matched the crime window. Isaac leaned in. "That fire escape was never in the case files." "Exactly," Shelby said. "They didn't want it to be." Isaac copied the photo and data to a secure USB. This, plus the phone logs and suppressed forensics, might force a judge to vacate the conviction. Shelby crossed her arms. "So what happens to me?" "We'll put you in contact with legal aid," Mira said. "Anonymous tip status. You'll be protected." Shelby didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Get him out," she said quietly. "He doesn't belong in there." By noon, Isaac was back at the DA's office. He didn't wait for a meeting. He walked straight into Assistant DA Vale's office and dropped the USB onto his desk. "What's this?" Vale asked flatly. Proof your case is rotting from the inside, Isaac said. Photo, time-stamped, fire escape, witness never brought to court, suppressed forensics, burners tied to a fixer. How deep do we have to dig before you start pulling indictments? Vale picked up the USB and turned it over in his fingers. I need to verify this, he said. Do it fast, Isaac snapped. Reyes is still in a cell. Vale's face was unreadable. If you're right, we don't just overturn a conviction, we open a scandal. Then open it, Isaac said, because letting it rot is no longer an option. That evening, back in his cell, Marcel waited. He'd heard nothing all day. 48 hours were ticking away. And the quiet was getting louder. Marcel stared at the ceiling. The seconds felt louder than the fluorescent light buzzing above him. The clock on the wall, crooked and faded, ticked toward midnight. He didn't know how many hours had passed since Mira's last visit. Vesper was gone. The silence gnawed at him. He'd memorized the guard rotations, knew when the food trays arrived, when the distant hallway radios crackled. But tonight, everything felt delayed, uncertain, the kind of quiet that signaled change or doom. Elsewhere, in a sealed meeting room inside the Redwood City Justice Building, Assistant DA Thomas Vale stood before a projection screen. On it, the photo from Shelby, the burner phone logs, the forensics Isaac had recovered. This is enough for a judge to vacate the conviction, he said. But the fallout. District Attorney Carol Wyatt, stern iron-gray hair, looked unimpressed. You're telling me we pinned a murder on the wrong man for 5 years? Because no one checked the fire escape? Vale clenched his jaw. Because we ignored what didn't fit. Wyatt looked at the screen. Who's the man in the photo? No positive ID yet, but the limp matches a former contractor tied to Wexler's estate, name of Everett Linford. Disappeared right after the murder. The fixer, Green, wired money to a Linford account 3 days prior. And we never brought this up in court? Because it was buried. Wyatt sat back, eyes narrowing. We do this. We destroy public trust. We destroy our office. Vale stood taller. We destroy what deserves to be destroyed. She looked at him sharply. I didn't think you had this kind of backbone, Thomas. I didn't either, he said, until I nearly watched an innocent man die. Outside the courthouse, Mira stood with Vesper beside her truck, staring at her phone. Isaac hadn't called yet. 48 hours. That was the window. That was the deal. If Vale didn't act now, the order would expire. She glanced down at Vesper. We're running out of time, girl. Back in his cell, Marcel sat on the edge of the bed, fingers trembling. He didn't want to die bitter. He wanted to believe the last 2 days meant something, that maybe, for once, truth had a shot. The hallway lights flickered. Footsteps. A guard appeared, breathless. Reyes, he said, you've got a visitor. Marcel stood. At this hour? The guard opened the door, and there stood Mira, eyes red, but smiling. They filed it, she said. What? Vale just submitted the emergency motion to vacate. They're scheduling an immediate hearing. Marcel blinked. What does that mean? She stepped forward, took his hands. It means the clock's not running out on you anymore. It's starting over. The courthouse was silent when they arrived. It was nearly 3 a.m., and yet a judge, Justice Evelyn Coe, had agreed to an emergency session. Mira couldn't believe it until she saw the lights on inside courtroom 2B. Marcel stood in handcuffs, flanked by 2 officers. Mira was beside him, steady as stone. Isaac waited in the gallery with a laptop and folders spilling over. At the bench, Judge Coe scanned the file Vale had just submitted. She was older, sharp-eyed, and wore her robe like armor. This is substantial, she finally said. Mr. Vale, you are moving to vacate the original conviction based on new exculpatory evidence, suppression of material facts, and prosecutorial oversight. Yes, Your Honor, Vale said. We believe Mr. Reyes was wrongfully convicted and deserves an immediate stay, followed by full review. Is the original victim's family aware of this motion? Coe asked. We've made contact. Vale nodded. They are not contesting the review. They just want the truth. Coe turned to Marcel. Mr. Reyes, do you understand what is happening here? Marcel stepped forward. His voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. For 5 years I've waited for someone to believe me. I'm not asking for pity. I just want the truth to count for something. Coe studied him, then turned to the court clerk. Effective immediately, the conviction of Marcel Reyes is vacated pending full reinvestigation. Bail is not required. Mr. Reyes is to be released under supervised custody into the care of Ms. Vega. Mira gasped. Marcel stood frozen. I can go? Coe nodded. You are not a free man yet, but as of this moment, you are no longer a condemned one. The sun had just begun rising when the prison doors opened. Mira stood just beyond the gates, leash in hand. Vesper barked and lunged forward, not in fear but joy. Marcel stepped out. Not in chains, no uniform. He was just a man in borrowed clothes, blinking into the light. Vesper bounded into him, knocking him back slightly. Marcel laughed, the first real laugh in years, and wrapped his arms around her neck. Mira walked to him, holding out a hoodie. Still cold in the mornings. He took it, smiling. You always overpack. And you always underestimate how long we'll be outside. They stood for a moment, the three of them, facing a world that was no longer behind bars. Isaac pulled up in his car and leaned out the window. We're not done yet, he called. Green's still out there, and whoever pulled his strings. Marcel nodded. Then let's go find them. Mira opened the truck door. Vesper jumped in. Marcel paused, hand on the door. Thank you, he said quietly, to no one in particular. Then he got in, and they drove away. Toward the truth. Toward what came next. Marcel stared out the window as Mira drove through the quiet streets. The city looked smaller than he remembered. Maybe it was the time of day. Or maybe 5 years behind bars had reshaped everything. Vesper sat beside him, occasionally nudging her head into his lap. He ran a hand along her back, still needing to convince himself this wasn't another dream. I keep expecting to wake up, he murmured. Mira glanced over. You're awake, Marcel, but this isn't over. Not yet. She was right. The conviction was vacated, but he wasn't exonerated, not officially, not until the real culprit was caught and the full truth came out. At the Redwood City Police Department, Isaac Dempsey was already ahead of them. He stood in front of a whiteboard littered with evidence. Phone records, cash wires, building blueprints, and now a photo of Everett Linford, the contractor with the limp. Everett Linford worked for Wexler's company for 3 years. Isaac explained to Mira and Marcel later that day. Got injured on the job, was denied workers' comp, filed a lawsuit, and lost. Sounds like a grudge, Mira said. Isaac nodded. And 6 weeks before Wexler's death, Linford suddenly clears his debts, paid off credit cards, car loan, even booked a one-way flight to Belize. He never took it, did he? Marcel asked. No, Isaac said. He vanished before the departure date. And the fixer? Mira added. Green wired $20,000 to a holding account in Linford's name, disguised under a shell company called Morning Light Holdings. Guess who's listed as the legal contact? Marcel leaned in. Who? Isaac tapped the board. Assistant Prosecutor Jared Mace, the guy who helped try your case. Mira's jaw dropped. You're saying a prosecutor funded a fixer to silence evidence? I'm saying, Isaac growled, someone in this building wanted a clean conviction more than a correct one. Later that night, Marcel and Mira sat on her back porch. The city lights twinkled in the distance. Vesper chased moths along the fence. Do you think they'll run? Marcel asked. Mira shook her head. Not yet. Men like Mace always think they're untouchable. That's their blind spot. Marcel looked down at his hands. You saved me. You saved yourself, Mira replied. I just gave you a little more time. They sat in silence. Then Marcel asked, What do we do now? Mira gave him a small, tired smile. We burn the whole thing down, legally. The Redwood County Courthouse wasn't built for truth. It was built for power. Tall pillars, marble floors, security cameras in every corner, but none pointing at the ones in charge. Marcel walked into the lobby wearing clean clothes, a jacket Mira had ironed, and shoes that didn't belong to a prison uniform. Yet every step still felt unfamiliar. This is where it started, he whispered, and where it's going to end. Isaac met them in the elevator. I filed an official misconduct report with the state bar, he said, against Mace. It triggered an automatic review. You think they'll take it seriously? Mira asked. They have no choice now, Isaac said. Too many eyes on this case. They stepped off on the 6th floor, where the grand jury offices were located. Isaac handed Marcel a file. This is your statement. You don't need to memorize it. Just speak from the truth. Marcel took the file but didn't open it. The truth's the only thing I've got left. Inside the hearing room, the energy was tense. No cameras, no reporters, just a dozen jurors, 2 legal observers, and Jared Mace, sitting cool and calm in a gray suit, like this was just another formality. When Marcel walked in, Mace didn't even flinch. Judge Coe was presiding. Mr. Reyes, she said, this is not a trial, it's a fact-finding hearing. You may speak freely. Marcel stepped forward. I want to talk about what it feels like when the people sworn to protect you decide your life isn't worth checking twice. He paused. Because that's what happened. I didn't just lose 5 years. I lost my family, my home, my sense of being real. He looked directly at Mace. And you. You let that happen. You chose that. Still no reaction. But the room had changed. Something had cracked. Marcel continued. There was evidence, witnesses, a back door no one ever checked, a second report that vanished, a fixer hired to bury a crime, and a prosecutor who made sure none of it saw the light of day. He set the folder on the table, unopened. You can read all of it. But if you really want to know what happened, look at the choices made by the people in power. Judge Coe spoke again. Mr. Mace, do you have a response? Mace stood, calm, polished, but beneath his tone, a flicker of unease. I categorically deny any misconduct, he said. If mistakes were made, they were procedural, not malicious. Marcel stared at him. You buried me alive. I hope one day you feel what that's like. Coe raised a hand. That's enough for today. The grand jury will deliberate. Outside, Marcel exhaled. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. No matter what they decide, you were heard. Isaac's phone buzzed. He checked it and looked up, eyes wide. What is it? Mira asked. They found Linford, Isaac said, in Arizona, under a false name. He's in custody. Marcel blinked. Then it's starting. No, Isaac said. Now it's really starting. The interrogation room in Phoenix was bare, fluorescent light, 1 steel table, and Everett Linford, sitting with arms crossed and jaw clenched. Across from him, Isaac Dempsey. A local officer hit record. Isaac leaned forward. We know who paid you, Everett. Linford didn't blink. You took money from Green, staged the scene to frame Marcel Reyes, and disappeared. Belize ticket never used, but you left traces. Wire transfers, surveillance, footprints. You're not a ghost. You're just sloppy. Still nothing. Isaac placed a photo on the table, the one Shelby took of him on the fire escape. Linford's eyes twitched. "I didn't kill him," he muttered. Isaac leaned in. "Then tell us who did." Silence. Then. Wexler was going to expose something. Big. Green said it was better to shut him up. I was just supposed to scare him, but someone else was already there. Isaac's jaw tightened. Who? Someone from the DA's office. Not Mace. Someone higher. I never saw the face, just the voice on the burner. But they wanted Reyes gone. Said he was clean, easy to pin. Back in California, Mira and Marcel sat in front of a news broadcast. Breaking man convicted in 2019. Murder now cleared after new evidence emerges. Prosecutor under review. Fixer in custody. Marcel turned off the screen. "I don't want to be on TV," he said quietly. "I just want my life back." Mira nodded. "Then let's start with the small things." She handed him a set of house keys. "You're staying here until you figure out where next is." He looked at the keys like they were made of glass. "Thank you," he whispered. The next morning, Judge Coe issued an official ruling. The state of California hereby acknowledges the wrongful conviction of Marcel Reyes. All charges are dropped with prejudice. In the same breath, the governor's office announced an independent task force to investigate prosecutorial misconduct tied to the Reyes case, and others from the same decade. Marcel stood on the courthouse steps, pressed behind barricades, microphones extending. He held Mira's hand. "I'm not here to burn bridges," he said into the cameras. "I'm here to build something better, so no one else gets buried like I did." Vesper barked beside him. The reporters laughed softly. For the first time in 5 years, Marcel Reyes wasn't a case number. He was a man. Free. The house was quiet again. Not prison quiet, not sterile or steel, but peaceful. Mira's guest room had a window that looked out over a quiet street. A tree swayed lazily in the breeze. Birds chirped. It felt almost too gentle, like a world Marcel had imagined, but never quite lived in. He stood at the window, coffee in hand. Vesper lay curled at his feet. The headline on Mira's tablet was still glowing. Wrongfully convicted man, exonerated after 5-year legal battle. Marcel clicked it off. He didn't need to read it. He'd lived it. Later that day, Mira returned from the store to find Marcel in the backyard, building something from scrap wood. "A doghouse?" she asked, setting down groceries. Marcel shrugged. "Something to do. I'm not used to having time." She sat on the porch steps. "You'll get used to it. Then you'll hate being bored like the rest of us." He smiled, just slightly, and kept hammering. "I keep thinking about all the people who didn't get this second chance," he said quietly. "The ones who died in there. The ones nobody believed." "You're not obligated to fix the world, Marcel," Mira said. "Just your piece of it." "That's the problem," he replied. "My piece touches all the others." Meanwhile, across town, Isaac entered a dark-paneled office inside the Department of Justice. A man in a pressed suit waited behind a desk. "Detective Dempsey," the man said. "We've reviewed your report on Morning Light Holdings and Jared Mace. We've also traced additional cases with similar suppression patterns." "How many?" Isaac asked. The man handed him a folder. 11 so far, but there may be more." Isaac opened it. Faces, names, timelines. "This isn't just a scandal," he said. "It's a system." "And you cracked it open," the man said. "Are you ready for what that means?" Isaac didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. That night, Marcel sat on the back porch again. Vesper lay beside him, ears twitching. A cool wind passed. Somewhere down the street, a car idled too long. Headlights flicked off. Then on again. Then off. Marcel didn't move. He just watched. He wasn't paranoid. Not anymore. He was cautious. Because even when the truth wins, the people who lost power don't forget. The call came just after midnight. Isaac Dempsey groaned as his phone buzzed across the nightstand. He snatched it up, voice groggy. Yeah? A whisper on the other end. Raspy. Urgent. Don't trust the file. They're watching the watchers. Isaac sat upright. Who is this? Silence. Then, I saw it happen. Wexler. The real meeting. I have the recordings. He froze. Where? Another pause. Then an address. A payphone lot on the outskirts of Fremont. Come alone, the voice added, or you'll never hear from me again. The line went dead. By 2:30 a.m., Isaac stood under a flickering streetlight next to a rusted-out phone booth. Fog crept in from the east, and the lot smelled of gasoline and old rain. No one. Then a motorcycle pulled up. Rider helmeted, wearing black. They killed the engine, tossed a small USB drive onto the pavement, and sped off without a word. Isaac snatched it up. Back at his apartment, he plugged the drive into a secure laptop. Encrypted, of course. But the password prompt was accompanied by a note. Use the date Wexler died. He typed it. The folder opened. Inside, 4 audio files, labeled only by time. He played the first. Wexler's voice, calm, firm. I don't care who your boss is. You tell them I'm done laundering contracts for Morning Light. I'm not risking federal charges. Another voice, older, gruffer. You don't get to be done, Philip. You owe us. Then a third voice, colder, familiar. Jared Mace. We made you. We can unmake you. This little bleeding heart guilt trip, it's going to get you killed. The audio ended. Isaac sat back, heart pounding. This wasn't just corruption. This was conspiracy. Recorded, documented, and they'd tried to bury it under Reyes's name. The next morning, Isaac called Mira. Tell Marcel to stay indoors. Now. Why? What happened? They're not just running from justice, he said. They're trying to erase it. Marcel didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Ever since Mira told him about the call from Isaac, about the audio files, the voice of Mace, the threat to Wexler, his mind had spun like a machine, with no off switch. He stood at the kitchen window, watching the driveway. No movement, just the soft glow of dawn, beginning to peek over the rooftops. Mira entered quietly, rubbing her temples. I called in a favor. Local PD will do periodic checks, but they won't station anyone here. They don't want to admit how deep this runs. I'm not scared, Marcel said. I just don't want anyone else to get hurt. Mira looked at him. That's exactly what scares me. Meanwhile, Isaac moved fast. He didn't send the audio to news outlets. Not yet. Instead, he gave it directly to a federal contact, someone he trusted from a past trafficking case. The agent's name was Erica Cho, and she didn't blink when he handed her the drive. We'll protect the source, she said. But you understand, if this goes wide, it's going to torch careers, including yours. I'm not worried about careers, Isaac said. I'm worried about justice. She smiled grimly. Then prepare for fire. That night, Marcel took Vesper for a walk, against Mira's advice. He stayed on the sidewalk, flashlight clipped to his sleeve, his hoodie pulled up. Halfway down the block, he heard it. A click. Behind him. He turned. A car door closed quietly. The silhouette of a man leaned against the hood, smoking. Marcel froze. Evening. The man called softly. Do I know you? Number, but some of us know you, the man said. And we think you're making a lot of noise for a guy who's lucky to be walking. Marcel gripped the leash tighter. The man stepped forward slightly. This isn't a threat. It's a courtesy. You don't seem very courteous. Just don't dig too deep, Reyes. Sometimes what you find doesn't want to be found. Then he turned, got back into the car, and drove off without headlights. Vesper growled low, hackles raised. Marcel whispered, "Yeah, I felt it too." When he got back, Mira was pacing. He told her everything. "We have to move," she said. "Now, before they decide threats aren't enough." "No," Marcel said, jaw firm. "We don't run. Not again." Mira stared at him. She saw it. Not fear, not desperation, conviction. He wasn't the same man who left that prison. He was ready for war. The burner phone rang at 3:41 a.m. sharp. Isaac picked it up on the first ring. No name, no greeting, just, "You should have stayed quiet." Then the line went dead. He stared at the screen, heart hammering. The threat wasn't vague anymore. It was direct. He immediately checked his cloud backup. The folder where he stored the audio, gone. Replaced with a single line of text. "You've been warned." At Mira's house, Marcel pored over a printed copy of the transcript from the recordings. He'd underlined Mace's words, highlighted the lines about Wexler's threat to go public. Mira returned from the garage, pale. "They slashed my tires." "What?" "All four. No noise, no alarm, just done." Vesper barked, low and alert. She was staring at the back gate. Mira grabbed her keys, then remembered. The car was useless now. "We're not safe here," she whispered. "No," Marcel said, stepping toward the window. "But they are scared. That's why they're doing this." He looked at Mira, calm but urgent. "We turn this over to someone who can't be touched." "Like who?" "Not media," he said. "Not the state. We go federal. We go public. On our terms." By 10 a.m., Isaac met them at a motel on the edge of town. He had 2 laptops, 3 backup drives, and a printed map of regional DOJ satellite offices. "They wiped my online backup," he said. "But I made a hard copy before uploading." He handed it to Mira. "We send this straight to Agent Cho in D.C. I trust her." "What if they intercept it?" she asked. "We hand-deliver it," Marcel said. "We drive straight there if we have to." Isaac blinked. "You'd do that?" Marcel looked at both of them. "I spent 5 years in a cell because I trusted the wrong people to do the right thing. I'm not making that mistake again." That night, as they packed bags, Mira found something taped under her mailbox. A flash drive, just one file, no label. She plugged it into Isaac's spare laptop. A video opened. Fuzzy, black and white. Surveillance footage, time-stamped the night of Wexler's murder. And there he was, Everett Linford, entering the estate. But then another figure stepped into frame. Not Mace, someone else, tall, bald, military posture. Isaac's jaw dropped. "That's District Attorney Wyatt's security chief." Mira whispered, "Then this goes even higher than we thought." Marcel didn't say a word. He just clicked, save. The car was packed by sunrise. Mira drove. Marcel sat in the passenger seat with Vesper curled between his legs, laptop balanced on his knees. Isaac was in the back, finishing a draft of the affidavit they would deliver to Agent Cho, with the flash drive, the transcripts, and the new video. The further they got from Redwood City, the lighter Marcel felt, but not freer. Not yet. They reached Sacramento by mid-afternoon, pulling into a secured federal building where Cho waited outside, flanked by 2 agents in plain clothes. "You weren't kidding," she said, as Isaac handed over the drive and paperwork. "District Attorney Wyatt's private security," Isaac muttered. "On tape, night of the murder." Cho's expression darkened. "I've been in this job 12 years. This is the first time I've seen the rot this deep." She looked at Marcel. You ready to go public? He hesitated, then nodded. Let them hear my voice. The press conference was small, fast, controlled. No names were spoken. Not yet. Just a simple message. A systemic failure has come to light. Evidence of coordinated suppression, misconduct, and framing in at least 4 major cases tied to Morning Light Holdings and key state legal officials. Mira stood beside Marcel. Isaac stayed off camera. They said enough to shake the walls, but not so much to burn down the building. Yet. That night, they watched the world react. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. Justice for Reyes. Expose Morning Light. Who is Wyatt? But with exposure came consequence. At 1:12 a.m., a Molotov cocktail was thrown through Isaac's motel window. He'd stepped out to get ice. Had he not, he might have been dead. No one spoke as they watched firefighters put out the blaze. No reporters came. No statements were issued. Only silence. Only smoke. The next morning, Marcel woke up early. He went to a nearby cafe with Mira. Vesper lay at his feet, watching strangers walk by. He stirred his coffee and asked, "Do you think it's worth it?" She didn't answer right away. Then, the truth always costs something. The question is, would you rather pay or stay in the dark? He looked down at Vesper. The dog's eyes were steady, loyal, unafraid. "I've already paid," he said. "Might as well buy the whole damn truth." They clinked mugs. The storm wasn't over, but the sun was up, and they were still standing. 3 days after the press conference, Marcel stood on the edge of Mira's back porch, watching a gray truck idle down the block. It hadn't moved in hours. "Third day in a row," he muttered. Mira handed him a mug. Same truck? Same dent on the bumper. They sipped in silence. Inside, Isaac was on a call with Agent Cho. She sounded tired, almost brittle. "We traced Morning Light Holdings to 8 different shell companies," she said, each one tied to a political donor, law firm, or judge. "But they're lawyering up. No one's flipping yet." "Anyone cracked?" Isaac asked. "One," Cho said. "A junior clerk, scared out of her mind." But she confirmed. Someone at the top ordered Reyes's name substituted for Linford's during the arraignment review. Intentionally. "That's enough to bury Mace." "No," Cho said. "That's enough to start digging. Burying him will take more." Meanwhile, Marcel received a letter. No return address. Inside, a single page, typed. "They will paint you as unstable, a fraud, an opportunist. We advise you stop while you're ahead. Last chance." Marcel crumpled it, tossed it in the fire pit without a word. Vesper barked once, loud, then turned toward the backyard gate. Seconds later, a police cruiser rolled up. Mira stepped out front, confused. "Can I help you?" The officer approached carefully. "We received a report of stolen property linked to this residence." Marcel appeared behind her. "That's a lie." "Mind if we take a look inside?" "You got a warrant?" Mira asked sharply. "No, ma'am. Just a request." "Then you can request somewhere else." The officer hesitated, then nodded and walked off. Mira closed the door with force. "They're probing us," she said, looking for a weak spot. That night, Isaac called an emergency meeting in the garage. He'd hacked into an old internal memo database from the DA's office. One document stood out, a transcript of a conference call between multiple high-level officials, including Wyatt. One quote was highlighted. "As long as the Reyes case holds, no one asks about the offshore grants." Marcel pointed. "What are the offshore grants?" Isaac's face was grim. Payoffs, millions, from corporate firms funneled through Morning Light, to judges, prosecutors, even a senator. Mira stared at the paper. "If we release this, they won't just retaliate, they'll bury us." Then we go bigger, Marcel said. How? We go to the only place left that doesn't owe them. Where's that? Marcel looked at them both. The people. They didn't call a news station. They called a streamer. Her name was Gia Dell, a former investigative journalist who had been ousted after exposing a pharmaceutical cover-up. Now she ran her own encrypted live stream, watched by millions, and her motto was clear. No sponsors, no filters, just truth. Gia agreed to meet them in a warehouse an hour outside the city. You're risking your lives for this, she warned, watching them set up. Marcel placed the drive on the table. That's what they said when I tried to prove I was innocent. She raised an eyebrow. And look how that turned out. He nodded. Exactly. The broadcast went live at 8:05 p.m. No warning, no teaser, just Gia's voice. Tonight you're going to hear what the state of California doesn't want you to know. About corruption, about justice, about a man they tried to silence. The camera panned to Marcel. He sat straight, hands folded, Vesper at his feet. My name is Marcel Reyes, and 5 years ago I was imprisoned for a murder I didn't commit. He told it all. The framing, the fixer, the threats, the recordings, the offshore bribery, the secret quote from Wyatt's office. Gia backed every claim with documents, visuals, and timestamps. Then came the climax, the video, Wexler's final moments, the second figure entering the frame, the audio of Jared Mace threatening him. Chat exploded. This is insane, Mates knew. We need arrests. Now, if this is true, half the justice system's bought. By the time they ended the stream, over 9 million people were watching. But with fire comes smoke. The warehouse power cut out 10 minutes after the broadcast. Lights died. Laptops blacked. For a split second, everyone froze. Mira grabbed Vesper. Isaac covered the drives. Then backup lights flickered on. Solar-powered. Gia exhaled. They're already trying. Marcel turned to her. Was the footage mirrored? She grinned. 3 times. 1 in Sweden, 1 in Argentina, 1 in Iceland. They can't scrub this. Isaac looked up. Then they'll go after us. Marcel clenched his jaw. Let them. That night, trending hashtags exploded across platforms. Reyes files. Expose the DA, corruption leaks. By morning, District Attorney Wyatt was under official federal review. But there were no arrests. Not yet. Because when a system's designed to protect itself, it fights back harder than any criminal. And Marcel Reyes just declared war. The morning after the broadcast, Mira opened her laptop to check the news and nearly dropped her coffee. A headline stared back. Breaking. Whistleblower Marcel Reyes, accused of evidence tampering. Source: Central State Tribune, owned by Wyatt-affiliated media group. She scrolled. The article claimed anonymous sources had provided proof that Marcel had edited the recordings, that the entire broadcast was a manipulated vendetta. I knew they'd come swinging, Isaac muttered, peering over her shoulder. But this fast? Marcel stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his shoulders. They're planting doubt, he said, calm. It means we hit something real. But public opinion's shifting, Mira said. Half the comments now say you faked it. Even some news anchors are pulling back. That's the goal, Isaac added. They can't kill the story, so they discredit the storyteller. Across the city, Jared Mace sat in his corner office. 3 screens showed 3 different news channels, all debating the legitimacy of Marcel's claims. No arrests yet, no subpoenas, just noise. He sipped his espresso slowly. Let the media do its job, he told his assistant. By tomorrow they'll be calling him unstable. But Agent Cho, I've taken care of her access credentials. She'll hit walls now. The assistant hesitated. What if Reyes doesn't stop? Mace smiled faintly. Then we stop him. That afternoon, Marcel received another envelope, hand-delivered. Inside, photos. One of Mira exiting a grocery store, one of Isaac walking to a gas station, one of Vesper alone in the yard. On the back of each, a red X. No words, just warning. Mira turned pale. Isaac cursed under his breath. Marcel stood in silence for a long moment. Then he folded the photos and placed them in the fire. No more hiding. They reached out to Agent Cho, but her number was disconnected. So they sent the files to a dozen independent legal watchdogs, international and domestic. Within 24 hours, 6 responded. 2 confirmed they'd already opened private investigations into Morning Light Holdings and the linked officials. 1 offered full legal representation, and 1 was already subpoenaing Wyatt. But that night, Mira received a call from a blocked number. A voice, young, maybe early 20s. "I work in Wyatt's office," the caller said. "They're cleaning files, burning paper, erasing emails. You need to move fast. Who are you?" The voice cracked. "I can't say, but I have access to something they missed." "Then show us." Pause. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll send coordinates, and come alone." Another ghost, another thread in a growing web. But this one might be the key to breaking it all. The coordinates led them to an abandoned rail yard on the southern edge of the city. Rusted tracks, crumbling sheds, and graffiti-covered freight containers. Mira insisted on going with Marcel. "I'm not letting you walk into another trap alone," she said, strapping a taser into her coat pocket. Vesper came too. The dog never left Marcel's side now. At exactly 7 p.m., a young man stepped out from behind an old station shack. Hoodie up, face obscured. "You came," he said. Marcel nodded. "You work in Wyatt's office?" "Intern," the boy said. "They don't notice people like me." He handed over a flash drive. "What's on it?" Mira asked. "A digital backup of the DA's internal archive. Meeting minutes, payment logs, audio clips. There's a recording. Mace threatening a judge. Explicit." Unedited, Marcel's jaw tightened. "Why give this to us?" "Because you're the only ones doing something, and because if they find out I kept this." He didn't finish the sentence. Vesper growled softly as a gust of wind blew through the empty lot. Mira looked around. "We need to go." But the boy didn't follow. "I'm disappearing after this," he said. "New name, new city." Mira reached into her coat, pulled out a prepaid phone. "Use this if you need help." He took it, nodded once, then vanished into the shadows. Back home, Isaac analyzed the drive. "Encrypted, but weak," he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Give me 15 minutes." It took 7. What they found stunned them. One folder alone contained wire transfers to 14 different officials. 4 judges, 2 senators, 8 law enforcement brass. Each payment was labeled retention silence. Adjustment verdict favorable. Insurance, Reyes case. Isaac stared at the screen. "This isn't just enough to bring down Wyatt," he whispered. "This could unravel half the state's justice system." Mira backed up the data 3 times, 1 copy to a server in Switzerland. "We dropped this," she said. "There's no undo button." Marcel nodded. "Good, because I'm not looking back." But before they could send it out, a power surge blew the lights. All screens went black. Vesper barked, ears up, tail stiff. Mira grabbed a flashlight. Outside, the street was too quiet, too still. Then, a soft click at the back door. Isaac froze. "That's not wind." Marcel moved toward the hallway. Another click. Front door, this time. They were surrounded. Whoever had waited this long was ready to end it. But so were they. The first door burst inward. Mira screamed. Isaac ducked. Marcel grabbed the flashlight and swung it hard. The beam caught a masked figure mid-step. The attacker stumbled, crashing into the coffee table. Vesper lunged, teeth bared, slamming into another shadow near the hallway. A muffled shout followed. 3 more rushed through the back. Isaac dragged the laptop toward the kitchen counter, shielded it with his body, and yelled, "Get the drive out!" Marcel dove into the side room, grabbed a pre-packed messenger bag, and slipped the encrypted backup inside. Mira kicked one of the invaders down the stairs and locked the door behind him, panting. "They're not cops," she said. "No badges. No warnings." "No, they're cleaners," Marcel muttered, like Mace promised. But the house was built to withstand old bones, thick walls, and 3 people who had survived worse than fear. They fought room by room, with makeshift weapons, reflexes, and desperation. It lasted 28 minutes. When the last figure fled through the broken window, bleeding and breathless, Marcel stood over the wreckage of his living room. Sweat soaked his shirt. Glass crunched beneath his boots. Mira had a cut across her arm. Isaac's lip was bleeding. Vesper stood guard by the door, fur matted but eyes fierce. No words, just survival. Within 2 hours, Agent Cho called. "I'm back in," she said. "Someone tried to lock me out, but they missed one server." Marcel uploaded everything: the final drive, the internal logs, the wire transfers, the video, the intern's voice recording. It took 5 minutes to transmit. By noon, 6 federal warrants had been issued. By nightfall, Jared Mace was in custody. By dawn, District Attorney Wyatt was indicted. Marcel didn't celebrate. He stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, Vesper by his side. The skyline looked the same, but everything had changed. Behind him, Mira joined quietly. "It's over," she said. "No," Marcel replied. "It started." She smiled. "Then we fight again, just not tonight." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the first photo they'd ever taken, the one outside the shelter, when he adopted Vesper. Back when he was just a man trying to find a second chance. Now, he had given others theirs. He folded the photo, placed it in his wallet, and whispered, "We made it, boy." Vesper leaned into his leg, silent. Mira watched them, eyes soft. A story that began in chains had ended in truth. No one could erase that. Not anymore.